The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. You are at the Durian Hit with Grace.
And this is Arlene.
So good morning to you. So in the conjunction of the KLEFF, which will be kicking very, very soon.
Yeah,
October 16 to 18 at Publica.
The Kuala Lumpur Eco Film Festival. I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. And this year it hits the 8th year. And it's amazing how this festival has come up till today, and that they are getting bigger and bigger, and of course having a lot more activities, right?
And also musical performance. That's
Yes.
the part that I think a lot of young people will be looking forward.
Yeah, so this morning we both, me and Ali, we are very excited to be able to speak to these beautiful people here in our studio. And one, his name is Jas Ibrahim. He's a singer-songwriter. He's also very active when it comes to environmental issues. And on the other hand, we also have Elena Murang. She's a very beautiful lady, and she's very talented, and she's an artist in Malaysia. So let's say good morning to them. Hello.
Good morning.
Hello, morning.
How are you guys?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, we are okay. Right. So let's start our interview, but shall we start with Jess first? We have invited you before, but can you just briefly introduce yourself again to our listeners?
Right. Hi, my name is Jas Ibrahim.
Hi, Jess.
I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, and like mentioned earlier, I've been involved with a few environmental initiatives in Malaysia. And for this year, for the Eco Film Festival, I'll be performing with my band for the Green Vibes, and also for the Anugerah Hijau award ceremony that will happen on Saturday, and Green Vibes on Sunday. So we're called Monsoon Market, and for anyone out there who'd like to watch us perform on the festival,
Of course.
Monsoon Market.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, let's go a bit further, Jess. I know you've been always involved in all those environmental issues, right? But how did you know about this festival, and how did you get involved and commit to this festival?
Right. Well, since 2006, I've, along with an old schoolmate of mine, we started a non-governmental organization called Tree Theatre Group, and our NGO is a child and youth-based NGO that uses performing arts as a way to spread environmental messages.
Right.
So we do songs and dance on environmental topics like biodiversity and other social issues as well. So since 2011, we've been invited by the Eco Film Festival to participate and to do our performances during their events. And so I got to know of Eco Nights and Eco Film Festival through since then.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this is, it's been about 4 years.
4 years since you got to know them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That is a very strong relationship.
yeah. So only recently I started doing my own music project, and when I started the band, they invited us as well to come into our performances. So I've been involved ever since 2011 with my NGO, and I'm just really honored that they kept on inviting. And
of course, they have to invite you.
But it's really great though, because I think Eco Film Festival is one of those events which I'm not saying is something lacking here in Malaysia, but it's something very unique in a sense where they not only showcase local films on environmental topics, but also films from abroad. The submissions are very diverse, and it highlights very important environmental topics which I think if they did not screen here to the public, a lot of people would not know of these things.
We need more of those awareness about our environment.
Right.
I totally agree with Aline and Jess here about the awareness, especially when it comes to environmental issue. Only recently we got to know all this haze and also recycling and dividing all these trashes. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But then it needs more awareness and practices in Malaysia for all the younger generation, especially to
Yeah.
practice all
And
the activities.
I think through film, like that's a really
Powerful.
very powerful kind of method of bringing that message across, because we're living in an age where visual is very
Important.
Important,
And-
yeah. It's very engaging, and
Yeah.
people are more aware. I guess will be more aware when these things, when-
For sure, yeah, and that's really wonderful. And then the journey you have taken so far, I think it's really amazing. And
That's
then, yeah,
That's amazing.
not only you're doing music, but you're also very heavily involved in all those environmental activities, and that's another wonderful part that I can, tell my friends very proudly. Say, hey, I have a friend, and he's a Malaysian, and he's really, really good at the things. Right. How about Elena? Could you introduce yourself and then what you do, and then how did you get involved in the KLEFF this year?
Sure. So I'm a visual artist and also a musician, but mostly focused on art that is inspired by Borneo. So I grew up in Sarawak in Borneo, and it's a very, very kind of, green environment. Used to go to the sea every weekend or to a waterfall or go hiking or something.
Wow.
And then, so obviously like now a lot of that kind of impacts my work. So a lot of my visual language or the music that I play. So how I got involved in KLEFF was, so I just moved back to KL probably about December. And so it's still like quite new in KL. I'd never been to KLEFF before. And I got a call from Yasmin saying that, she wanted to meet up for coffee. So I was like, okay. So I went along and I met up with her, and she said, she kind of explained to me what KLEFF was and how it had progressed over the years. And she said, we'd really like it to invite you to be our ambassador for this. And I said, yeah, of course.
Wow.
And she goes, oh, that was easy. She thought she would have to, like, I don't know, maybe coerce me a bit more. But no, I think it's a really, really great initiative, because not only for, like, the films that they have, but, they have, like, the artwork and the stalls and the talks and the workshops and the music as well.
It's like a whole community market,
Yeah.
just meant for awareness on sustainability as well as the environment. I think that's great.
Yeah, a lot of things to
Yeah.
look forward to. So for those listening, please do come. for
Yes,
the
of course.
festival.
But
Yeah.
Elena, could you tell why you're so passionate about the environment, and how do you relate those environment to your paintings and in music?
Yeah. I mean, the environment is the natural environment. It's just so beautiful to be around, and I think it's something, it's natural, right? So when I'm there, and I think for a lot of people, when you're in the natural environment, it just calms you down sometimes, and it's just a really, really beautiful place, and it holds so much knowledge. So even the people who live there in the villages, and trees and the birds and the stars, there's so much you can tell from them. Some things obviously like I don't know, but I think there's so much more to learn.
Right. Well, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, you've been to your hometown several times to do some fundraising projects as well, right?
Yeah, so my village is called Long Peluan, and it's close to the Sarawak Kalimantan border, so it's part of Miri. And earlier this year there was a flood there, and it never floods there, not in my lifetime anyway. So all of the 4 bridges were washed away by the flood. So I just did some fundraising by selling my artwork to build a bridge back for them. So the bridge kind of connects the village to the rest of their farms.
So is it all completed, or is it still ongoing?
Yeah, it's completed. So,
very nice.
so it was only enough funds for one of the 4 bridges, and the other 3 bridges were supposed to be built by some private companies and stuff, but that hasn't been done yet.
Well, that's fantastic. Let's go back to Jess here. How about you, Jess? You've briefly mentioned about your theater projects and also the music as well as your activities that involve in the environmental issues. Could you elaborate more on that? And how did you start, and what are the areas that concerns you the most?
Well, ever since my primary school days, our school has, with I think the PIBG and the Teacher Association, they've organized a few recycling projects, which coincided with the yearly animal conservation initiative. So what happened was that for each year, the school would select an endangered animal, and we would raise funds through recycling, newspaper collection as a way to help various NGOs involved in. For example, in turtle conservation, in elephant conservation. So from there, I got my exposure, I guess, to these kind of issues, but it's more to wildlife conservation. However, when I was 9, I was invited by a friend to attend a camp by Yayasan Anak Warisan Alam, or YAWA, and they're a child-based NGO, and from there I learned more about further about environmental topics such as climate change, recycling, and various issues. It was through Yayasan Warisan Alam I was able to participate with them in various international conferences organized by the United Nations Environment Program, called the Tunza program, which is a program for children where they organize biannual conferences. So every 2 years they will have an international conference, and they'll gather NGOs from all over the world. And then there I kind of like expanded more, like, so I kept on progressing on my exposure to environmental topics, and I found out that it just inspired me because I got to know that not only myself, kids around here who doesn't happen to do environmental activities, but around the world, like, kids are really trying hard to get their message across on various things. There's on desertification, there's things on food waste and management, there's things on energy consumption, and so eventually when as I participated in the youth program for Tunza and the United Nations program, I also got involved, and eventually I was nominated to be a representative for Asia and Pacific for their Youth Advisory Council.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and about last year, we had the first United Nations Environmental Assembly. So usually how the United Nations have their General Assembly, but it's the first time that Environmental Assembly, where they had environmental ministers from all over the world to come and discuss. And yeah, it was really refreshing. And it was quite a challenge for us to get our voices and our point of views to the table, which we eventually did. We got to draft like a resolution that we got to submit.
So you managed to touch on the various sections.
Yes, we talked about climate change, we talked about indigenous people's rights, animal conservation, and those are, and yeah, but more recently I was involved with an NGO, Perubahan Iklim Persatuan Perubahan Iklim Belia Malaysia.
It's Climate Change
Youth
Association.
Yes, association, Youth Association, and they organized their third Power Shift conference, or Power Shift Malaysia. Power Shift basically started in Istanbul in 2013, 2012, like that, around the times. I'm sorry if I mistaken the date, but basically it's a platform for young people who wants to be involved in campaigning or activism, environmental activism, more specifically to climate change, but it's where they gather different people who can provide skills on how to go about that campaign, what they can do, the tools they can use. So recently, about last month, they had the third Power Shift, and yeah.
So the young people in Malaysia are quite active.
Yes.
I mean, to say that the level of awareness is, maybe it's not as widespread, but the young people that are, conscious on environmental issues, they seem to be very active,
Right.
participating in either local or regional, even international events.
In fact, under the same NGO Persatuan Perubahan Iklim Belia Malaysia, they have selected 20 young Malaysians who would represent Malaysia in the COP21 conference in Paris.
So from
later this year.
different states, is it?
Yes,
in
from
Malaysia?
different states in
Amazing.
Malaysia. So actually young people are quite active here in Malaysia.
And the COP21 conference is one of those turning points since Kyoto Protocol.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Yes.
hopefully something would be coming out of it.
Hopefully.
How about you, Elena? What is your perspectives when it comes to young Malaysians today? Do you think they are much aware of the environment issues nowadays, or we need a sort of a proper or better educational system in Malaysia?
I think there are definitely a lot of young people who are active in kind of environmentalism, but I think there are a lot more that are not. Yeah, and I think it's just kind of like in the circle that I'm in, there are a lot of young people doing it. But there's there's a greater need for more,
Elena,
because,
Elena, I'm wondering why the awareness among some segments of youth are not there when it comes to environment. Is it because the access of information is not there, or?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like the knowledge as well, because some people just don't know that the impact that's, for example, taking your lunch away in styrofoam packets has on the environment, and I think if you don't, number one, they either don't know the impact. If you do know the impact, I think it's too far removed from you. So there's that behavior attitude gap. So it's, even though you actually want to save the environment, it's too far away from you to actually take action to do it. Yeah, so I really think it's to do with education, educating adults as well, so that they can support their children and build a way of life that's more environmentally friendly.
And also maybe building new habits and new culture. I mean, in the past, using plastic bags was a norm, right, among Malaysians. But nowadays, I think it's a new culture that we bring our own paper bag or our own reusable bag.
And some supermarkets have they're charging plastic bags
on Saturday especially, and it all started from Penang, if I'm not mistaken. They initiated this project,
and also the waste separation.
Just recently,
it's something it's kind of a milestone as well.
We also just started in Durian actually.
Well, to be honest, a bit of hassle, but then when you think that when you separate all these treasures, you feel it's more organized, and then you know where all you're putting your treasures for. So okay, this one is for the recycling. This is not, are recyclable, so we just separate them. So it's all sort of like educating us consciously and unconsciously as well. So let's continue our conversation after this short break. We'll come back.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. And you're at the Durian Hit with Grace
and Arlene.
So we've been speaking with Alena, who is an artist in Malaysia, as well as Jess Ibrahim, who's a singer-songwriter. So let's continue our conversation from the first segment. We've talked about the awareness and how we want to educate the younger generation especially. So Jess Ibrahim, do you want to add more on that in terms of the political will when it comes to environmental issues, any organization, how they've been acting? But perhaps on the other side, you don't see much of the execution.
I think it's definitely a big need for things to happen from a grassroots level, as opposed to just implementations from the governments and so on.
I mean, we are so used to top down when it comes to implementation. We always think that, okay, this is the government's responsibility, we should just demand for it. But I think it comes both ways.
Yes, I think it needs to have that balance from both sides. You definitely need the enforcement on one end, but you also need the culture from the other. And I think the people need to start changing their habits in terms of consumption, especially consumption, because
Right.
I think right now we're in an age where things get produced very easily, but they also get wasted easily as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We-
And you know, just a bit of a fun fact: Malaysia is actually one of the biggest coal consumer
Right.
in Southeast Asia, most probably. And
Yeah.
this is worrying because coal is one of those, I would say, evil energy.
It's definitely not clean.
Yeah, it's
and
not clean at all.
there's a need to educate the people as well on the type of things they use, because it's very impactful to the environment. And Malaysia has on a list of a lot of things. Like recently, we're also I think the highest deforestation rate. We have the highest deforestation rate
Right.
in the world at the moment, and it comes from a lot of things on the type of businesses and
Development for
developments
sure. Yeah.
that we involve ourselves in.
Mhm.
So there's a shift that's needed, and I think we're at a point where it's not too late, because we still have the resources, our natural resources, but we also have the potential of adopting alternative ways of consuming energy and stuff like that. There's an organization called AMAN, Anak Malaysia Anti-Nuclear, and they're opting for green energy and also for solar energy, for example, which I think is a big potential here in Malaysia.
And they are against nuclear energy.
Yes, and also the reduction of fossil fuels is I think it's much needed, and now but apart from that, I think right now we're seeing I wouldn't say a trend, but a movement that's happening across the board at different aspects of society, in terms of religiously, like in June, the encyclical of the Pope on the Pope had an encyclical on climate change, for example, opting for Catholic Christians to adopt more sustainable lifestyle and also to combat climate change. And also in August they had the Islamic Declaration on climate change, and even years before that, I think the communities the religious communities from the Buddhist and Hindu side had earlier on already had made their own declaration on these things. And why I highlight this topic on religion in relation to environment, because we're in Malaysia, especially we're in a society where we're multi-religious, multinational as well, but also spirituality is kind of like one of our roots in culture, and religion goes along with it. And in fact, this Sunday they're going to have a interfaith dialogue in
This coming Sunday.
Yes, in Ilham Gallery, where they're going to talk about religions and their relations to climate change and the environment.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's one way to also try to how it can help change the culture and the habit of society, because a lot of our majority, I think, of the people here are, I wouldn't put the term religious, because I can't say for sure, but they definitely are influenced by the religious values and stuff.
And I think at the end of the day, like, the more groups, diverse groups, either from religious groups or even ethnic communities, that can speak out on the issue of climate change, that goes across the board,
Exactly, and I think it will influence a lot of people. And yeah.
Well, that's very amazing. Coming from a religious point of view, how they want to relate themselves to the environmental issue and to be educated their own community. I mean, it always needs to start somewhere and then small, and then I'm sure as long as they start somewhere, it will go to the extent where they'll be able to reach bigger groups in the future. But Elena, in your hometown, how is it like there when it comes to environmental issues? Are there any activists or any sort of form of groups there who have been heavily involved in this sort of area?
Sure. So last weekend I was actually in Kuching for a gig. Actually, Jess was there as well.
Yeah.
And we were playing for the social enterprise called Barefoot Mercy. And Barefoot Mercy, they work to bring solar lights and micro hydro to the rural areas. So it's, you know, a form of clean energy as well. There's quite there is quite a movement in Kuching now, at least, and I think it's honestly, I think it's because people have kind of lived outside of Kuching in Malaysia, and now they've come back to Kuching and they've brought more sustainable practices, I think. So greater awareness about like not using plastic bags, about carpooling, but those like little things that individuals can do, even like switching off your aircon, not using a dryer. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm interested in the micro hydropower because I think in Sabah and Sarawak the geography is a bit different than in Semenanjung. A lot of the villages are off the grid when it comes to power grids. So are there a huge movement there in Sabah Sarawak right now to encourage villages to use micro hydropower?
And I can't say much for Sabah because I'm not very sure. In Sarawak now, they've the chief minister, I think a few weeks ago, just announced that the Baram Dam will not be happening.
Oh, so that's so cool! Yay!
Okay, so I was going to explain to you what the Baram Dam was. So I'm glad you know about it. And from what I hear, that he's going to try and start encouraging micro hydro more. Yeah, so that, you know, and you talk about geography as well, and a lot of it's because it's hard to travel into the interiors, and when you actually want to like build something. So for example, when we were rebuilding the bridge, quite a lot of the cost came from actually just transporting materials, you know, like 10 hours on a logging road, for example. So things that are off-grid actually, you know, could work. My village now, Long Puluan, is, if I'm not mistaken, it's 100% running on solar power.
Wow.
Yeah, since the start of this year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Well, we've talked about all those organizations as well as the government will and including religious community as well when it comes to environment issues. But I find it to be very irony when it comes to when we see all the scientific innovations and the really advanced technology coming in, and at the same time, as much as the awareness level is there in Malaysia, but still it needs to be pushed more. And it's very irony that it doesn't meet the level of the development and the level of awareness. There's still a huge gap between them. And would you care to elaborate? Why do you think it is?
Well, it's really difficult to say. It's more to do with the industry that our region is involved in. As you can see, what the haze is going on nowadays, and it's been going on for years. You know, ever since I was a kid.
For decades, actually.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Like there's haze every year, and there definitely need to be a stop to it, because it's ridiculous. Because you give a really good point. Like we're supposed to be a developing country, and we reach a point where we'd say we're kind of developed. However, we still have these
sort of lack of something like not exactly the awareness.
I think good practices. I mean, for example, the recent haze. Governments could have solved the matter easily by adopting a greener or more sustainable way of either planting palm oil or clearing lands rather than burning forests. And now you have a situation where the whole region in Southeast Asia are facing haze.
And there needs to be a consideration on how to implement those practices, because I'm not saying that we should that the total ban on palm oil plantation, for example, that might not be the answer, but we have to consider the fact that Malaysia, Indonesia, we're an area that has a lot of peat forests, and once these areas are exposed due to clearing of land, they basically heat up and more forest fires will be ignited, and so we have to see that it has a domino effect as well.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful and find a balanced alternative in pursuing these type of industries. However, like I mentioned before, we either do that or we could just switch, altogether. I mean, there's these new technologies on more sustainable means of agriculture and also energy, and that's definitely something that we should consider adopting. And
if I'm not mistaken, all those companies, they just go for the easier way to produce more and mass produce their products. So that's why the burning is one of the ways, and it's cheaper.
But
and it's faster.
companies will go to the extent where the law allows them to be, or the law, if the law is not being imposed to them, or there's no law at all to regulate these activities, companies will go as far as they can.
I think just recently Singapore is going to help Indonesia in managing these forest fires, and but yeah, I think the companies involved need to be more responsible.
That's true.
And that's something that they should definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
But and in the brighter news, I think recently ASEAN had a disagreement on illegal wildlife trade, that they are going to I wouldn't say not regulate, but to put a stop to it, which is really good, because I think that's one of the major issues happening right now, because our population for the Malayan tiger and now pangolin, for example, very endangered, and it's due to this practice of illegal wildlife trade. And so I think, this was discussed even since last year, but this year I think they put it on the table again for discussion, and I think there needs to be more dialogue on it as well, and because Malaysia is rich in biodiversity, and it's really disheartening to kind of realize that our own people are involved in these things. And it's not a really good practice, and it should be stopped. And I'm really glad that they're having this dialogue.
I can already feel the sad vibe from Jess. I hope you don't cry, Jess.
I know. Don't kill the animals, guys.
Yeah, Elena, you want to add something?
Yeah, it's just a thought, and we're saying the companies are doing this and they're kind of stretch as far as they can go, but they kind of do it because of consumers as well. And I was just thinking, honestly, I do not know where every single ingredient in a product that I buy comes from.
Right.
So I don't know. I probably should know, but I don't know if this the supply chain down to does this product come from something that's causing all the haze? Is that what I'm buying? And I'm buying it, then I'm supporting it.
The answer is
yes.
I'm
because
sure the answer
palm oil
is yes.
is almost in every single product.
Yeah.
And here we are all complaining about the haze, but actually we're the ones kind of supporting it.
The demand is still from the consumer. So that's, I think we talked about this earlier. It boils down to education. I think if people are educated about what they are buying, what they are using, I think they'll be more careful next time.
But Jess, do you know if we have access to that information? As in, can we somewhere online or in reports, as in company reports or something? Is it possible to find that supply chain?
Well,
did you guys?
Not really exactly, but recently we discovered that WWF Singapore, they have a website, they call it We Breathe What We Buy, and you can actually find information about products that may contain palm oil.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a good way to educate ourselves and to be a more conscious
buyer.
consumer.
So I don't want to sound so pro Singapore, but that's the difference. Singapore, the information is just there that people can get it.
Right.
In Malaysia, as much as we some communities are very active, but then receiving the information just right in front of your face, it's still not there yet.
Yeah, I think it's also partly due to the fact that palm oil is a really big industry here. So
for sure.
Yeah, of course, people don't want to jeopardize that. But that's the beauty of the online. You can get these information very
easily, right?
Yeah.
Well, so we've been talking to Jess Ibrahim and Elena Adrian ASEAN, talking all sorts of kinds of environmental issues. But then for the next segment, which will be our last segment, Durian Heat, we'll talk more about their personal stuff, which is music, and also how they have been involved in the KLEFF. So stay tuned.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. You're still with Grace
And Arlene.
at Durian Heat, where we discuss issues around Southeast Asia. And we've been speaking to Jess Ibrahim, who's a singer-songwriter, as well as Alena Murang, who's an artist in Malaysia.
Hello.
Hi again, thank you. So, guys, let's talk about your music. We're very curious here. Of course, we did invited you guys individually before, but never we have two of you guys at the same time in a house and to talk about your music. Of course, you guys will be performing at KLEFF on Sunday, 18th of October, right? So let's start with Jess.
Okay.
Yes. So you have a song which is related to environmental issues as well. And then could you elaborate more on that, your music and your tunes?
Well, I started writing songs on environmental issues ever since I started an NGO back in 2006 with
How old was
old
that?
schoolmate of mine. I was thinking about like 13.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And, along with some of the parents of my previous primary school.
I see.
So we do performances on environmental issues. So we try to use arts as a way of spreading those messages. And yeah, I just started writing songs on the deforestation, on climate change, and
So you write songs on environmental issues first before like writing about love or breakup.
relationship.
Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
Well, it was like
Your love towards the environment is deeper than anything else, right?
I don't know, like it kind of makes sense to write songs about that, I guess, at the time. But yeah, I was partly influenced by like Zainal Abidin and also Bob Marley.
He's amazing.
Yeah, and I started listening to Bob Marley as well, and a lot of their songs, like I don't know, they gravitated towards more on very social based topics.
Messages.
And yeah, I started writing songs. The first song was Tears of Trees, I think, and so as I pursued music more, especially after my secondary school days, I started writing about more general things, and some songs about love, if you will, and stuff like that. But however, I still do sometimes write about these issues, and about last year I started a band with some of my college mates, and we have like elements of trying to mix it up, like it's kind of like a fusion band where we have elements of alternative rock, but also elements of asli music.
What is
And
asli music?
Asli music is a form of traditional music in Malaysia. It's like an ensemble type of style, but it's more like folk music. And
You also have a song about haze, right?
yeah,
Oh, really? I was just about to ask that question actually.
yeah. So we're going to perform that at Eco Film Fest.
Awesome.
Yeah. So our start, I think it's like about 8 p.m. but it'll be really fun and exciting because we'll be playing with a lot of other like really cool acts as well. I mean, there's Faz, there's Jamero,
Alena is there as well.
Alena,
Yeah.
Razlan Shah, Bill Musa, Venopian Solitude. I'm really looking forward to Venopian Solitude. She's quite awesome, and yeah, but I
my question here is, do your band members understand your lyrics, as in terms of like, do they relate all those lyrics to themselves when they hear all about environmental issues?
Well, I hope so. I mean, yeah, we do talk about it sometimes.
Of course.
They kind of ask like, what's the song about, and I explain to them, and they get more familiar about the topic, and because we arrange the songs together, so it really helps when when we do communicate about the message, and and eventually they kind of like kind of understand what the song is about, and yeah.
So you've been educating your own band members.
Yeah, I can see that.
we all teach each other a few things.
Aw,
yeah,
of
like,
course.
yeah, but
That's really sweet. How about you, Elena? Could you explain about your sape? We really want to know about your instruments.
Sure. So the sape is a lute instrument from Borneo. So a lute instrument is just generally an instrument, I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, it's generally an instrument that's made out of wood and strings.
And it sounds really beautiful. And then you also been giving lessons to students. So do you see a lot of people want to learn all the traditional instruments, especially sape?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I started learning about 12 years ago, and I was one of the first girls to learn. So
what do you mean first girls? You mean it's meant for men before this?
Yeah. It was taboo for women to touch the sape before.
Yeah. Why?
So there's several reasons. One was because the sape used to be a like a spiritual healing instrument used during the pre-Christian era. So it was only like the shaman who were the men who could communicate with the spirits via the sape. So for that reason, women weren't allowed to touch it. It was more like sacred and stuff. But then after the communities there, a lot of them became Christian. They put aside all of those beliefs. So we were taught by Uncle Matthew Ngao. And he's now recently been conferred as living heritage for the country.
Oh my God! Wow. This is
yeah, and he's just so cool. And he so I was quite young when I started learning, and me and my girl cousins were like, yeah, cool, we're the first girls to play the sape, and we would play at like Rainforest Music Festival or like different functions and stuff. But only I think 2 weeks ago I was playing with him in KLIA 2. We were doing like a fundraising gig. And there's an interviewer interviewing him, and he started saying things that I guess at the time I was too young to be aware of. Like, he was kind of questioning himself if he should be teaching girls the sape.
Right.
And he said he had to because there were no other young people interested in it at the time, and he was really, really worried that the sape would die out. But now me and him are seeing like really, really stark increase in interest to learn the sape, not only by, people of the community, of the Orang Ulu community, but by everyone. Everyone wants to learn the sape now.
You guys are doing vigorous education, I wouldn't say program, but workshop, I suppose, to people outside who may not even know what sape is.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't use it vigorous to describe it yet. But I think we're doing what we can because there's not a lot of teachers, I guess, sape teachers, because some people can play the sape, but they don't necessarily want to teach it. And then some people have like different teaching styles. So some people only say like, I only want like very serious one-on-one classes, then I will teach, My approach is whoever wants to learn, I will teach you what I know. So trying to teach more.
That's really beautiful. Well, talking about sape, right? How do people receive and see sape instrument today compared to those days? Let's say when you just start to learn the sape.
How do people receive it?
Nowadays, when they see your performance playing sape, are they really familiar with the instrument, with the tunes that you singing and playing at the same time, or do people still have the perception, girls should not play sape?
I don't think. I personally don't feel like there's a perception that girls shouldn't play the sape. Yeah. And when Sarawakians hear the sape, I think they feel very kind of nostalgic and they really associate with the sounds. But I don't think that a lot of people know the names of the different tunes or if they recognize this tune,
right?
That kind of thing. But it's very interesting. I was talking to Jess about it at the weekend, actually, how the sape is a pentatonic instrument, so only 5 notes, but people just love it. They love it so much.
And the pentatonic is very easily accepted worldwide, and the people can remember the tune very easily. So I mean, Jess, how's your experience learning sape from Elena so far?
It's been really, really great.
Just say whatever you want, Jess.
No, she's a really great teacher, and
was she strict to you?
Well, no, but she's been great actually, and she's been very educational in terms of the history of the sape, and also it's I think it's the way of playing it, and she always like paints this picture like to us on the background of it's a very riverside type of music.
I see.
And it's really relaxing and to learn, because it's not just as simple as just playing those 5 notes. There's also like a lot of techniques involved. And yes, it's really hard sometimes, but she gives us a really good lesson on some of the skills and like the flicking and the styles, which but
is it really easy because you are a guitar player, you're a guitarist, and to play sape, is it easier?
Right, I think definitely. I think if you're used to playing string instruments before learning the sape, you can kind of adapt it. But however, it's not as simple as that.
All right.
It's a very different way of playing it as well. Like I said, there's a lot of different like specific kind of techniques, which I think just makes it sound more colorful in itself. And I think if you do come by to watch Elena's performance, you'll see for yourself how beautiful it actually sounds.
We're actually looking forward to watching the show. Yeah.
Traditionally, sape is being played in any specific events?
So before, and I actually don't know much about the pre-Christian times, because actually not a lot of people, not a lot of the elders feel comfortable talking about it. So I only recently learned that it used to be played in like spiritual rituals for like either healing, or if someone could sense that a spirit was in a room, they would play like the song of the spirit in order to communicate with that spirit. And then but apart from that, it was also played for entertainment purposes. Like, we sit down and play the guitar, and the sape would just be played, and it's usually accompanied by a dance. So the sape player would play a song for entertainment, and then a girl would get up and dance. So it's called the hornbill dance, and then accompanied by a male who does the warrior dance. And it was just for entertainment. Yeah, nowadays sometimes it's used in church, sometimes it's still used for entertainment, sometimes it's used to like at the start of functions or ceremonies. It's a very, very versatile instrument.
That's beautiful. Really fantastic. Yeah. Well, before we end our shows today, Elena and Jess, could you tell our listeners when and what time you guys are performing at KLEFF?
My band, Monsoon Market, we're performing at 8 p.m. on Sunday.
And that's on the 18th of October?
Yes, at the B Publica.
Yeah. How about you, Elena?
If I'm not mistaken, I'm playing between Monsoon Market and Faz. So I think it's 7 p.m.
I think it's around 7:20 plus.
Thank you, 7:20. And then I'm also playing on Saturday in the square in Publica. I'm playing at 5:30 to 6:30, and then at 1:30 I'm actually going to join you guys have to catch this, by the way. I'm going to join Uncle Solomon, who is an amazing sape player from Miri, and we'll be playing to raise awareness for scholarships for Orang Ulu children.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So basically this event, the festival KLEFF, is held from October 16 to 18. But do not miss out their amazing performances, which will be held on 18th of October. But like Elena mentioned, do visit a square at Publica on the 17th as well. So thank you so much, Jess and Elena, for joining us for the interview this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
And all the best, and we'll catch you guys the performance today.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.